And welcome back to the 20 strongest Captain Class Shinigami video. Last week we did Renji at the number 17 spot, and this week we have Rose. Oh god, I always forget his last name. Rose from Bleach. Rose. And this is why I forget his last name. How do we pronounce it? Ōtoribashi. His actual name is Rojiro Ōtoribashi, but Rose is for short, basically. He's referred to Rose. So he's the former, now current, once again, captain of Squad 3. He was the captain of Squad 3 back in the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. He obviously got turned into a hollow, was exiled, and then Gin took over, and then he took back the spot after the whole Aizen event. Rose's abilities, I mean, like any captain, he knows Shimpo, and it's implied he's probably a Kido user, just given the nature of his Zanpakuto, though we really never see it that much. His Zanpakuto, Kinshara, takes the form of this gold whip with like a bladed flower at the end. It's great for melee combat. We see him basically tear apart James in his fight with Master Masculine. It's as a whip, it's also good for grabbing. Its actual ability, though, seems to revolve around the manipulation of sound on some level. Although it's never truly specified how that works. Excuse me, because the only ability we ever see is, I'm going to see if I can pronounce this, Kinshara Sokyoko Dai Juchiban. Izayo Bara, or Golden Side Tree Sonata number 11, 16-day moon rose, or 16-day-old moon rose. Now, where basically when the flower at the end of the whip attaches itself to an enemy, he taps the whip on with his fingers, kind of like a piano, causing it to glow and make the sound of a strumming guitar string, or tap it but string like a guitar. Sound travels up the length of the whip to the flower tip and creates a vortex or a reverberating sound that acts like a shockwave, destroying everything within a considerable area of the blast. Assuming it's not strong enough to survive the blast. But the thing is, Sonata number 11 implies there's at least 12 other abilities involving sound that this Zanpakuto has. We just don't see them, which is kind of unfortunate. That's a big problem, I think, with that Bleach did have. Is that when it showed abilities, for instance, Love was a perfect example of this too. We kind of saw an ability of his Zanpakuto, Tengumaru, I believe it's called, but we never get an explanation of what it actually does. That's the same problem here with Kinshara, is that we never actually get an explanation of what it really does. It's clearly involving the manipulation of sound on some level, but ultimately how that works is anyone's guess. That being said, it's still a pretty capable weapon, as long as you know how to use a whip. His Bankai, Kinshara Butadan, or which Kinshara translates, by the way, to Golden Side Tree, whereas Kinshara Butadan translates into Golden Side Tree Dancing Troupe. Basically, his Zanpakuto is reduced to the little conductor's wand, while this giant conductor's hand with a conductor's wand appears in front of him. And roughly speaking, how many of these guys appeared? Forms a large pair of flying, one of them holding a large conductor, and several large beings with petals. Several. I'm looking at the picture right now to figure out how many I'm seeing here. I think it's supposed to be like a dozen. Basically, and they're all made of the same substance that the whip is theoretically made of. Basically, what the Bankai actually does is allows you to use music to create physical illusions that actually hurt you. He states the music gives him power over his target's heart. As long as the target's heart is deceived, the illusions are realistic and powerful enough to physically damage the target and affect the surroundings as if they are real. The various attacks which the illusions use lay in the various dances which the dancers perform. Further, Rose controls these dances by conducting them with a conducting baton, as the music conductor would. We don't know how many dances there are. There are at least 3, and we only see 2. Sea Drift, basically, the figures surround the opponent, spin around until they create a whirlpool of water. Prometheus generate fire, basically, from the hands and engulf the target in flames. And Ian Hadel, it's either Ein, I'm going to say Ein. Ein Heiden Leben, or Hero's life. Due to mass preventing Kinshara Butsudan from working on him any longer by crushing his eardrum, their technique remains unseen. However, it's implied this one might be like a straight out kill attack. We have no idea how many answers there are, so we do have to go with what we have. Normally, I wouldn't like last time I did this, I actually didn't include him, but I figured at this point we can include him on the list of captains in terms of their overall strength. So with that being said, how does he stack up against all the other Captain Class Shinigami, including the ones we've seen so far versus the ones that we haven't shown in the list? Well, first off, getting out of the way right now, we know he beat Ikkaku in a fight, because Ikkaku only won against one guy, and it wasn't this guy, it was Tozen. But yeah, Ikkaku just doesn't measure up well against... He doesn't have the sheer power to overwhelm or to overpower these abilities, nor does he have any sort of technique or ability that would be very well equipped to handle these abilities. Like, the Whirlpool probably wouldn't do much, and honestly, against his whip, his three-section staff actually wouldn't be a bad weapon against the whip, because it would break away any sort of, what's the best term? Leverage, I suppose you say, because when you attach onto a solid substance, you immediately got a firm, taut grip on it. But if the substance breaks away, you immediately lose hold on that. Or you will risk losing hold on that at any point. So Ikkaku's Shikai, despite how simplistic it is, isn't actually a bad type of weapon against Kinshara. Problem is, Kinshara also has abilities, which Ikkaku does. And point being, Ikkaku just really didn't stack up very well against Kinshara or Rose overall. So we have to look at how he fared against all the other captains. Captain Class and Shinigami. So, against Yamamoto and against Ichibei, yeah, there is no real contest here. Against Yamamoto, there's no way he really stacks up. Because... Oh, pardon me. Sorry, I just had dinner recently. Because against Yamamoto, Prometheus, the Whirlpool, it's just an illusion. Even if Yamamoto believes it to be real, it's still just an illusion, and his fire would be enough to theoretically destroy the illusion, hypothetically. Shika to Shika, they're not going to fare up as well. But the bigger issue, I think, it stems with both of these guys, both Ichibei and Yamamoto, is that apparently, according to the Bankai, if the opponent, so long as the opponent is deceived into believing the illusions are real, they will have effect. So if you're smart enough, it's not like Aizen's where it doesn't matter if you know you're under the effects of Suigetsu or Kokia Sugetsu. You're still going to be affected by it. And this one, it doesn't seem to be the case. Both Ichibei and Yamamoto are old enough, wise enough, and tactical enough to be able to outthink the scenario, to basically see past the illusion. And even if they couldn't, their overall abilities are in spiritual pressure alone is enough to kind of break out of the illusion. Add on to the fact that it seems that Rose, especially when he goes into Bankai, has a problem with long-range opponents more so than he does with other opponents, because that's how Master-Lin basically kind of took him down. He blasted him with a laser blast. That's what happened. It was star-like laser blast. And both these guys have long-range attacks that could easily counteract the Bankai itself. So yeah, unfortunately, Rose did not fare well against really any of those guys. Against Soifone, see, Soifone is a slightly different problem. Soifone is someone who, she's very prideful and she's very young. She's a young captain. So her emotions can get the better of her in a fight. And while she does have, her Bankai alone could theoretically just counteract his Bankai. And it's like, as he's trying, she just Bankais and shoots him right in the face. I think the more simplistic answer here is that she just overwhelms him with sheer speed and physical combat strength. She is a master hand-to-hand fighter, and she's one of the fastest captains. I'd say the only captains that really rival her in terms of actual speed, or Captain Class Shinigami, at any rate, rival her in speed, would be Yoruichi, but she's not on this list because we just don't know her actual abilities. Yamamoto probably did. Biake probably does. And I'd say Shunsui or Unohana simply just because of their age. Oh, excuse me again. Just because of their age, they've had a long time to work on it. But yeah, she's one of, if not the fastest captains in the 13 Court God squad. And I think she just blitz Rose well before the Bankai even is able to take effect, assuming he's able to activate it, because she can easily two-step kill him. Although Aizen does say, Shinigami battles are a battle of Ryatsu, spiritual pressure, and his was so overwhelming that her two-step kill didn't work. So the question is do you think Rose has more spiritual pressure than Soifeng? Personally, I do not. So I do give the win to her in that regard. Then we have his successor, Gin Ichimaru. And Gin's another one where he is a bad matchup for Rose. He really is. Shinso alone is enough that you could just swat down the whip. And if Kinchara tries to wrap around and pull Shinso out of Gin's hands, he's just going to pull it back. Not to mention that we do know Gin actually is fairly versed in Kido. So while we can assume Rose is, we don't have proof on that. Bankai to Bankai is another problem because even though it's not as long or fast as Gin says, it's clear it's still very long and very fast. So even if it's not 500 times the speed of sound, it's more than likely it's probably half that, which still makes it like 250 times the speed of sound, which is nuts, which is extremely nuts, which means his Bankai alone is enough to take out Rose, even without using the actual ability of Kinshara, of Kami no Shini no Yari. Or is it Kami no Yari Shini? No, Kami Shini no Yari. That's the name of Gin's Bankai. So yeah, even without using the poison ability of it, he'd easily be able to take Rose down. So yeah, Gin was much stronger than Rose. I fully believe that. Coming in after that would be Unohana, and yeah, I don't think there's any feasible way that he beat Unohana in the fight. She was easily considered to be one of the strongest captains, period. And she proved that when she was easily manhandling Zaraki in their fight. Until Zaraki pretty much unlocked all of his abilities. And Zaraki at that point, spoilers, when we get to him, probably could have easily beaten Rose. Let's be honest. Okay, let's be honest isn't the right term. It would have been very unlikely that he could have won against him. But more to the point, she just outmaneuvers him on sheer swordsman skill alone. Not factoring Shikai, which her Shikai is not designed for fighting. That's the weird thing about Unohana, especially with what we learn about her in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, is that her Shikai really is not tailored to combat at all. But her Bankai seems to be much more tailored to combat and seems to be much more devastating. Now, again, I'll go more into what her Bankai seems to do, at least from what we understand with the actual official, seeing as they did update it. But it seems to revolve around the acid component of Minazuki's Shikai, except it revolves on the opposite end, where the stomach acid healed people, this acid kills people. And yeah, it doesn't seem to... and plus, she is a master of Kaido, so it doesn't look like his illusions would actually be doing much physically to her. And she's probably a Kido master as well. So she probably has that. She is extremely well-rounded. There's really no way he could beat her in a straight fight. I don't believe. So yeah, Unohana beat him pretty soundly. Then you have Shinji. And again, there was a reason Shinji was kind of the leader of the Visors. Now, we should note that Shinji's Bankai is no good in a one-on-one fight. Again, when we talk about Shinji, we'll talk more about how he really fares in a one-on-one fight. And we'll talk about his Bankai, but his Bankai affects massive amounts of people at once. It's no good on a one-on-one fight, which is why we never actually saw it in a one-on-one confrontation. But his Shikai alone is still pretty tricky. There's very few people, I think, who are equipped to handle, who are equipped to adapt to the Shikai's ability, or there's more than a couple of abilities that just can counter it, like Yamamoto's flames alone can counter just that effect by just blitzing the entire field. Unfortunately, Rose isn't one of those individuals. He needs to know where his target is, and if he doesn't know where the target is, then he's going to be pretty screwed. And Shinji, again, there was a reason Shinji was the leader of the Visors, because he was probably the strongest of the captains among them. Then you get into the Squad 6. Again, Biake is another guy who can kind of just overwhelm Rose. He can outspeed him. I'd almost be certain of that. He's probably the better swordsman. Yes, Rose is a whip user, is always a better whip user, but Biake is not. Add on the fact that his Shikai alone is said to be comparable to his Bankai when he got back after he got back from the Soul King's palace. So his Shikai alone is enough to really keep someone at bay and to have long range capabilities, which puts Rose at a disadvantage because if someone can just kind of take him out, the Bankai's done. So there's that problem. Add on to the fact that yes, Biake could just go into Bankai, just flood the field. And then you have to go into consideration that he's also a Kido master. So, yeah, Biake completely outclasses Rose in pretty much every category. Now, in terms of finally getting a victory under Rose's belt, I feel like we've been just beating him senseless since the Ikaku thing. He does pretty much beat Renji in a fight. Now, why does he beat Renji in a fight? And I brought this up in the Renji video. Because Renji doesn't really have an effective way of getting... Yes, Zabimaru has long-range capabilities, and whip-to-whip, arguably, Zabimaru is more dangerous because it's a blade whip, but Kinshara actually has Kido abilities and is better at actually grabbing things because it's an actual whip. Add on to the fact that they're Bankais. Well, Renji's real Bankai is extremely cool. His Bankai does not stack up well against Kinshara Butadon. Just for the fact that he would immediately be placed under the effects of the Bankai, and just because he beat Master Masculine doesn't mean he's stronger than Rose, unfortunately. Like ability to ability, Rose's abilities seem to be more tailored to dealing with people who are kind of more brunt force, more physical types of opponents. With the exception of one on this list, who you can guess who it is, but we'll get to him. So yeah, he did get a win out on Renji. And luckily for Komamura, he lost to Komamura. He was one of the few Komamura actually did beat. And that is simply due to the nature of Bankai to Bankai. Shikai to Shikai, these guys are probably even. Destructive power-wise, Komamura has the edge, but really they're probably even because Rose has got all the Kido abilities. It's really when you factor, and even honestly, his Shikai alone would be enough to overwhelm the Bankai, because all he has to do is swing Tekken down, this giant sword appears and just crushes down on Rose as he's basically getting cocky. And that's a big issue we got to address as we go forward, is that Rose has a tendency to get cocky with his opponents, and it really bites him in the ass. That's why Masculin won, because, you know, he flat out spoiled the abilities of his Bankai, and he got cocky, and then Masculin just destroyed his eardrums and then took him out after that. So going forward, we do have to address these facts about Rose. I should have honestly addressed it prior, but we are where we are right now. So moving forward on the list, we have the current squad 1, head commander of the 13 Court Guard squad, Shunsui. And yeah, there's no doubt in my mind, Shunsui completely overwhelms Rose in every category. He's a better swordsman. He's probably a Kido. We know he's a Kido master, whereas Rose, we can only speculate. His Shikai just gives far more ability Shikai to Shikai. His slash step is probably better. We don't really see him much in hand-to-hand combat. We can assume he's probably pretty solid in hand-to-hand combat as well. And then if we're selling Bankai to Bankai, if they were both to activate their Bankais against each other, right at the bat, Rose is going to get screwed over by the first dawn of Shunsui's Bankai, because it affects him. And then he's got the disease, which starts to affect, which was even affecting it being made of light. And it would immediately start to put Rose down. Then if we're talking Reiatsu to Reiatsu, I do believe Shunsui's got more Reiatsu. So, honestly, he probably doesn't even need to go to his fourth dawn, the final dawn, to blow off his head. So, ultimately, yeah, Shunsui, there's a reason he is the captain commander right now. So, yeah, Shunsui takes that. Absolutely. Now, luckily, there is a little bit of a bright spot for him. As remember, he beat Ikaku and he beat Renji. But there's a reason he places this much higher than the other guys on the list. There's a reason he places number 16 versus 17 and 20. So that he did get 4 wins against captains versus the 3 that the other guys had. Because against, against Shuhei, I do think he wins against Shuhei. Now, Shikai, first up, we know Shuhei does have some decent Kido on his side. Particularly, I can't remember which Bakudo it is. I know it's a high one, a high level one. I think it's a level 50 or 60 Bakudo. but it's the one where he throws the rods and impales them. And that would be tricky to deal with. And that might be a last-ditch effort if he got like hit by the Bankai. But ultimately, Kinshara just is a far more trickier weapon to deal with, I think, than Kazeshini. Because Kazeshini, yeah, it's hard to predict the paths, but if you were watching the chain, you might be able to predict its paths. And with a whip, you can be just as unpredictable as you can be with chain sides. Now, Kazeshini's real ability, which is to basically heal the user as long as they have Ryatsu, is very unique and very powerful. And I do believe it will come in handy for a little bit in the fight. But I do believe that even though Shuei is a captain class opponent, fighter, he probably doesn't have as much Ryatsu as, say, most of the other actual captains, whereas, some of their lieutenants definitely. But Bankai to Bankai is the real question. Obviously, now, I have addressed Kazeshini's Bankai, which I don't remember the name of right now off the top of my head. Basically, it locks you and your opponent together in like a chain dome, and the chains connect you and your opponent's Ryatsu into one giant pool. And every time you are injured, you will both heal and drain the collective Ryatsu pool. Now, that being said, it's very it's not a Bankai that's really designed for winning very well. And if you can't stand the pain, you can deactivate the Bankai or just get knocked out. Quite frankly, I do think that Kinshara Butadan overwhelms Shuei's Bankai due to the fact that there's probably a dance that could just knock out Shuei and then the Bankai's ends. But still, ultimately, and honestly, honestly, you don't even have to fight really, and then the Bankai just kind of stays there. And really, you could just knock someone out with some Keto or whatever. Now, again, we don't know if Rose is a real expert in Keto, but still. Then we go into both our Squad 9 captains. So against Kensei, I do believe he wins against Kensei. Kensei's too much of a close-range fighter. His Shikai seems to be better suited for long range than his Bankai does. Again, I do like Kensei's Bankai design. Like, it's a cool idea and stuff like that. It just, unfortunately, isn't that effective, ultimately. And the fact that Rose can attack from a distance, has range, has Keto-based abilities that would just overwhelm him, I do believe that's all she wrote. Tozen was a bit of a weird one. Now, obviously, I said he won against 4, and I've already said the 4. So obviously, I think he loses against Tozen. But both of them deal with sound. That's the weird thing. Sound and more so senses when it comes to Tozen's, particularly like vibrations. So Shikai to Shikai is really weird. I'd say they're kind of tied because we don't know Suzumushi Nishiki, I believe it's called. Which basically it's that loud noise that knocks out the opponent they used against Uryu. We don't know it, but Uryu was nearly empty on Ryatsu as it was. So we don't know against a regular opponent fresh and ready to fight that would work. My actual guess is no, it wouldn't, because if that would have worked, he probably would have used it against Kampachi to knock him out. But I'm guessing it's, again, Shinigami battles are a battle of Ryatsu, so I don't think that would have worked. And then Benihiko is a much more devastating physical ability than, say, anything Kinshara has demonstrated. Because Kinshara's abilities have to make, at least the first one we know, has to make contact with you. Whereas Benihiko does not. The question became stacking Bankai to Bankai. And unfortunately for Rose, Tozen's Bankai definitely tripped him up. Now, that's actually not to say Rose might not be able to handle Tozen. If you're asking me on a percentage basis, does he lose 100% of the fights? Actually, no, I don't think he does. And the reason for that is, Bankai to Bankai, yeah, he loses. But if he were to stick to Kinshara's Shikai alone, that whip might be able to help him out. And what I mean by that is, he'd be able to maybe kind of slice the area of the whip to basically try to find the opponent. So, unlikely he could beat Tozen, but I actually wouldn't say it's near impossibility. But I do give the majority of the wins to Tozen. Likewise, I do not believe in an instant that he could beat Toshiro. And I'm not a big Toshiro fan, if I'm going to be honest. I don't hate him. I think he gets way too much love. Like the fangirls love him and Biake a lot. Like, I just don't get it that much. Like, he's cool, but I get the impression Kubo kind of understood that everyone was like loving this character so much, and he didn't quite get it. So he kind of, did the whole, okay, give the fans what they want, but then kind of still made him a little bit of a bitch a little bit. Still constantly losing a lot of fights. So, but still, I understand why people like him. And again, Shikai to Shikai alone, yeah, Hiyorimaru is considered the most powerful ice-type Zanpakuto for a reason. Against elemental Zanpakutos, I do not see Rose's Zanpakuto faring very well. And then you go Bankai to Bankai, and honestly, he could probably... Honestly, Toshiro could probably just overwhelm him with a giant blast of ice when he tries to overwhelm him with his dancing troupe. So, yeah, Toshiro... And if the battle goes on long enough, obviously Toshiro's going to go into his adult form and freeze him to a crisp. Which is a weird sentence to say. You don't say burn to a crisp, but whatever. So yeah, no go for Toshiro, or no go for Rosenet. Then of course you have Kampachi, and he, like I said, he was the one guy when talks about physical strength who, pretty much, he is so much the embodiment of raw, unrefined, brutal power that he pretty much muscles through most abilities that would put normal people down. In the The Spirits Are Always With You light novel, which, as far as we know, isn't canon. Technically, the light novel, Camping Your Own World, isn't canon either, but you can pretty much say they're canon. He fought a clone of Espada number 8, which is apparently Espada number 0, but whatever, that's a different story. Basically, who had the exact same level of power as Silopero. And when he did the voodoo doll breaking the organs thing, he couldn't break the organs because Kampachi's organs were too strong. So, yeah, and that was Kampachi before the end of the series, like before even the time skip to the Fullbring arc. Kampachi probably would just muscle through the Buddhadon, really. He'd probably just muscle through those with just his sheer Ryatsu alone. Like, Kampachi has probably the most Ryatsu of anyone in the 13 Court Guard squad at this point. He is a mass of power, Ryatsu, and brutality. And then if we're factoring in, if Kampachi even decides to go into either Shikai or Bankai, his Shikai could probably cut down Rose's Bankai, no problem, assuming that they don't reform. And his Bankai, we know he can cut from a distance with his Bankai, because he cut Gerard Valkyrie from a distance. So, and that's not like Shinso extending and hitting with blades. No, he cut so fast and so powerfully that the slash of the vacuum of air that they created cut the opponent in half. That's how that worked. And that was like, and that was really messed up and pretty awesome. Kampachi I do think thoroughly beats Rose. Then we have Mayuri Kuretsuchi. Now, a lot of people, I saw a fight being done between him and Orhara at one point, and the guy gave him Mayuri everything that Mayuri had. He had gave him his Bankai, Shikai, sure, but he had literally every gadget he's ever had. The Kuretsuchi's corpse squad, the zombies, and more. Like, that's not how a realistic fight. Like, he wouldn't bring that to the fight because he wouldn't expect that. That made no sense. But yes, Mayuri still has this general layout. That's why in these fights I can't just give Mayuri something that's immediately going to counter the opponent. That doesn't work. That's just cheating at that point. Mayuri's got to go into what he has on call, which is still a lot, and quite frankly, enough that I think he would be able to overwhelm a Rose. Simply by going Bankai to Bankai, his poison overwhelms Rose, pretty much. And Mayuri is tricky enough with his body that he'd probably be able to figure out a way to counter the sound-based issue as well. And if he ever gets a cut on him with Shikai, he's just going to paralyze him. I don't think either of these guys are really great swordsmen in their own right. Rose more so, but not Mayuri. So it's probably not going to come to a close-range battle that often. And we know that Mayuri does know Kido. We just don't know what type of Kido he knows. Because we very rarely see anything very extreme. He's more of the scientific gadget kind of guy. But ultimately, he's tricky enough to, I think, avoid the actual loss against Rose. And his Bankai, like I said, would be enough, I think, to overwhelm Rose's Bankai. So Mayuri takes the win there. So we're down to basically our last two individuals, and it's our fan favorite hat and clogs, Mr. Ukisuke Uehara. Right off the bat, Shikai to Shikai, Rose loses. But then you got to also factor that Kido Master in Orhara knows, God knows how many. He thinks 1,000 steps ahead. And he's probably well versed in what his ability and how to counter a sound based ability. Because I'm sure if they went Shikai to Shikai, he'd figure out that it involves sound. So if Rose went into Bankai, Orhara would probably already be like blocking his ears and everything like that. So the Bankai wouldn't be working. And then you have Orhara's Bankai, which restructures anything it touches. So he probably could just restructure the Bankai and just cause it to fall apart, which means ultimately Rose loses. Honestly, I don't even think Orhara needs to go Bankai against Rose. He could probably just kill him in Shikai alone. Then finally, you have Ruki Akutsuki, the now current Squad 13 captain. Her Shikai alone is not a good matchup against his Shikai, because his Shikai still needs to get physical contact. And if she gets to below 0, she's going to freeze his Shikai. If they try to go Bankai to Bankai, he's immediately going to lose because his Bankai and him are going to be frozen solid and dead. So yeah, I do. And Ruki is also a Kido Master. Let's keep that in mind as well. So ultimately, he lost against Ruki as well. But yeah, so Rose placed at number 16 out of 20. He's in the bottom 5, but he's at the top of the bottom 5. Now, join us next week when we talk about the 15th spot. I'm not going to say what the 15th spot is, but the win ratios are starting to go up now. So don't worry about that. If you're wondering, Jesus, how are that many? Why aren't these guys winning more? Don't worry. They're going to be winning more pretty soon. But thanks for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. I'll do a review of it at some point. Ideas for who would win, Star Wars, superhero, magic, what if, anything I do with the channel. Put that in the comments below as well. I'll get that at some point. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for who would win and for the Q&A. So keep your eyes out for that. Later.